Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in on you. Hunkered down in the lab. It's been a crazy few weeks. Actually, had a doctor's appointment. Some of you may know that I had another health scare back in November, and we've been working on making sure that I optimize my health and get back into the type of health that I know I need to be in. And so we're on the way with that. We're making progress. Still have a ways to go, but we're making progress. I'm excited about some lifestyle changes, some things that I'm doing differently. Um, and it's a holistic endeavor for me. So I'm excited about that. But got the doctor's visit thing out of the way. Um, now, got a little sinus infection. I didn't go for that, but um, dealing with that. But it's got me a little, you know, little so and so. I wouldn't even say I'm under the weather. Just it's a little irritable. But other than that, I'm fine. Um, I want to talk to you about something that's going on here in Texas, and it's happening in places all around the U.S. And it falls under the category of something that I've talked about intensively. And I just want to talk about it a little bit because I think it's important to really gain an understanding of what's happening here. A young high school senior by the name of DeAndre Arnold has been suspended from his high school, uh, and they are threatening not to let him graduate. Hello, Regina. They are threatening not to let him graduate if he doesn't cut his dreadlocks. Now, I want to bring clarity to it so we can get through. There are all different types of discrimination policies in place in workplace, in schools that attempt to control and limit what Black people can do with their hair in a natural state. And I've talked about this. I've been an advocate for Blacks being allowed to wear their hairs in natural and cultural manners that are representative of who we are. Thanks, Regina. Um, and while I have you on here, I'm going to go ahead and make you a moderator on here, like you are on the other channel. I need as many as I can because not everybody shows up every time. But um, why I want to talk about this is because of the fact that it's an educational environment and the standards by the school's admission have been in place, the policies have been in place for more than 30 years. And they're representative of the Eurocentric idea of what is, what's professional, what's acceptable, what's beautiful, and it gives no consideration. It was policies that were created for white students, and it wasn't given no consideration is given to cultural reality, cultural identity, racial identity, and how important that is to self-esteem, self-image, self-confidence, and so much more. In many instances, it is given consideration and it's decided that that is the best route to take. We have to get out of believing that those who benefit from our marginalization, those who benefit from our demise, will actually sit up and champion the cause of empowering our youth. Uh, and that's something important. Now, what the policy actually says, because I've taken time to look at this, I've actually decided to get involved in this, but I have mixed feelings about where I stand on it. I support the kid 100%. That's not where my mixed feelings lie. My mixed feelings lie in the fact that we're fighting white people once again to be accepted into something they created instead of creating our own. That's where my mixed feelings lie, is that once again we're trying to get them to accept us into a situation so that we can attain accolades that are important to them but don't really truly serve us. With that in mind, I'll move on. But the policy itself isn't against dreadlocks. The policy is against the length of the hair. So, because my whole thing is, when I first heard about it, when I saw the dreads and they were making it seem as if the issue was his dreadlocks, I'm like, okay, the kid's been there for a while. He's a senior now. And so I'm pretty sure if he's got dreads like the ones I'm looking at, he's had them for a while. And why are they making it an issue his senior year? Well, the truth is the dreadlocks are not the issue. The length of the dreadlocks are the issue. And they have a policy that male students can uh, their hair can only be a certain length. I didn't get into yet. I haven't found out what that length is, but that's under the perception that anything on a male longer than a certain length is not professional, it's not acceptable, it's not classy, or whatever else their status or their idea or Eurocentric idea of what is says about it. It does not take into consideration the history of hairstyles within the Black collective of African American or African descendants, however you want to put it. And so it's easy to sit up and dismiss it and push it away because they have no connectivity to it whatsoever. It has absolutely no meaning to them whatsoever. And what I have a problem with is the psychological elements at play when we force our children to assimilate into a system that was never designed for them and does not take their unique existence into consideration. We are a unique people. How we wear our hair has been historically a huge part of who we are. And if we sit up and we allow everyone else to tell us how we wear our hair, and we're aspiring or told that if your hair isn't clean cut, close cut, and well trimmed, that somehow that makes you less professional, less classy. You look unintelligent, you look thuggish, you look raggedy, you look a bunch of things. It's no different than them trying to, professional businesses and companies trying to tell our women how they should wear their hair. And if their hair doesn't look a certain way that is more in alignment with a Eurocentric idea of what's beautiful, professional, and acceptable, then it can't be worn in the workplace. And we're starting to see our sisters win some cases. And there have even been some states and some cities that have taken on policies that Black women cannot be discriminated based on hairstyles. But what I'm saying is we are, first of all, completely ignoring the dynamic at play. What do I mean by that? I mean that when you sit up and you actually look at the initial dynamic before we even get to the hair, we consistently send our children to institutions that were created by whites for whites, that are run by whites, and expecting them to effectively prepare and empower our children to compete against theirs. And when I ask the people in the collective, uh, hello, Raw Lily, when I ask the people in the collective, does it make sense? I either get total silence or I get murmurs. You got to ask yourself. You can't sit back and say, okay, this is what we've been doing for years. So, okay, that's what we're going to do. We've been doing it for years and it hasn't worked. We've been behind the eight ball for years. We've been in last place for years. We've been locked into an oppressive, impoverished state for years as a collective. So it's obviously not working. So what are we going to do about it? They're never going to put us in a position to compete on an equal field with their kids. That's something we're going to have to establish and do ourselves. We're sitting up and fighting them tooth and nail to have access to something that will never mean the same to us as it means to them. Our degrees don't mean the same thing as their degrees mean to them. It's not going to open the same doors. Our academic accolades will not produce the same end result put in the same situation. We're going to have to sit up and say, okay, even if we're operating in this system, we have to have some way to subsidize it. If we're not allowed to move freely in the system, we will remove ourselves from the system and we will plug in somewhere else. We cannot sit up and have a kid who has, from what I understand, been a model student, a very intelligent student, a great student, has a future in front of them if he so decides, and then have all of that placed at risk because he wants to represent his culture. He's identified with something that is uniquely black and he's being punished for it. That has always been the push. They've always wanted to separate us from our values, our interests, our principles, our spiritual practices, our history. Why? Because if they can separate us from that, they create an identity crisis. When they create that identity crisis, just the natural yearning of wanting to know who you are will allow someone else to tell you who you are. But when you know who you are, it's a lot more difficult for people to tell you how you're going to behave when you know you come from royalty, when you know you're a historical aristocrat, when you know that you come from warrior loins, when you know that you come from some of the most creative people that history has ever known, when you know this, when you know that you have the ability to overcome anything you face, when you know you have the ability to rise above anything that comes at you, there's a difference in how you deal with things that are pushed upon you. You're no longer willing to accept that you're inferior. You're no longer willing to accept that the only thing you can do is sell drugs and gang bang. You're no longer willing to accept a lot of the things that they're telling you about what you can accept by way of employment. You're now saying, well, if you won't pay me what I'm worth, I'll start my own company, and I'll not only start my own company, but I will compete against you in what you wouldn't pay me righteously for. I'll do on my own, and then we'll just compete. And see, that's what we have to be preparing our kids to do, is compete. And we can't expect those we are competing against to prepare our kids to compete against theirs. That's simply not making good sense. And then if we're forcing our way into a situation that's not going to serve us, their academic achievements were meant for them. They're given far more gravity when they hold it than when we hold it. In fact, when we go out and get something that they got, i.e., a doctorate, they'll find everywhere in the world to marginalize it, dismiss it, invalidate it, and everything else. And so, what we have to understand is we've got to find a way to find our own value. We've got to find our way to find our own idea of what is and how it relates to who we are historically. We have to invest in ourselves and establish a sense of self and identity that's so powerful it can't be shaken. And I applaud the young man for saying, no, I'm not going to shave I'm not going to cut my dreads. I applaud him for standing up. DeAndre Hopkins, the wide receiver for the Texans, who also wears dreads, has come in and told him, young brother, don't shave your head. I'm standing with you. So he's starting to get the support from the community. My thing is, I don't have a problem with supporting him. I'm going to stand with him. I'm going to draft a letter. I've been calling, and if I've got to make a trip to the school, or to the school district or whatever, I'm going to do that. I'm going to speak from my understanding and my knowledge of what that does to a child. That's his history. That's his heritage. That's something he's connecting to that we don't expect you to understand, but we absolutely are going to need you to respect it. And so I'm going to speak on that. I'm going to step on that. My thing is this really the route we want to take? It has not worked for us. We won Brown versus Board of Education, but it didn't produce anything. They still found a way to segregate. They still found a way to make predominantly white schools remain predominantly white. While there are some of us in there, we've definitely not integrated into it. And they've done that by the most segregated force there is, wealth. They get you to focus on the color, but you're missing the biggest part. Racism is the guardian of the gate of elitism, which is basically executed and presented through wealth. The elite enjoy what they enjoy based on wealth and the power it produces. And they are able to manage that predominantly by the way that they orchestrate and engineer poverty along racial lines. So, in essence, we're expecting a group of people who benefit from our suffering to empower us to end the suffering. That's the first thing. Second of all, we will never be the people that we are designed to be, sitting by passively waiting on someone else to fix our problems. We're going to have to be aggressive in our approach. We're going to have to be intentful in our approach. We're going to have to be willing to come together as a group of minds and strategize. We need think tanks that, with experts, we need experts in politics, experts in finance, experts in community building, experts in business, experts in geopolitics, global economics. We need experts in education. We need experts in mental health. We need all of these experts to come together in individual think tanks that focus specifically on their area of expertise and put their mind together based on the data that's currently present and come up with ideas of how we're going to overcome these barriers that are in front of us. And we must, while we demand reparations, we must approach it as if we are not going to get it. We can't sit around thinking for another 40 years that the only answer and the only way out is reparations, because then we're not working on alternative solutions and we're not optimizing our ability to think our way out of situations. We are the most creative people in the world. We don't have to operate inside of their box. And what most people are doing when they start talking about how blacks are going to come up is they're thinking inside the political and economic and socioeconomic boxes that were created by this particular system. And when you operate in a system that wasn't designed for you to win and you're trying to think your way out of it using the rules that govern the box, you're never going to come out. It's going to come from things that haven't been thought of yet. It's going to come from ideas and creations that produce an entire new economy, an entire new geopolitical ecosystem, and so many more things that are possible when we put our minds to it. But we can't sit by thinking they're going to fix it for us. We can't sit by thinking we're going to consistently participate in a system that has done nothing but oppress and marginalize us, and all of a sudden there's going to be a winning hand dealt to us. There's going to be something that's going to come out. Yes, there are going to be anomalies. There are going to be exceptions. Those of us who are able to navigate the system and somehow gain a level of importance, a level of success, a level of wealth. But as the collective goes, so all we go. And what I'm trying to get you to understand there, I say this all the time. I said this 20 years ago, and I'm saying it now. If I, in anything that I've been able to do in my life, remain an anomaly among my people, meaning very few are going to do what I've done or even expect to do it, then number one, I failed. Number two, we have not succeeded in lifting our people. See, what they like to show us are the possibilities without looking at the dynamics and the realities and the actual schematics of what's going on. See, they like to say, well, he did it. They like to use the talented 10th to rub in the noses of the other 90% and say, it's all on you. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. He did. Well, see, the truth is, I didn't do it. I had a lot of help. I had people who looked out for me. I had people of multiple diversities that opened doors for me, that was there for me, that saw something in me. And they did it. I had strong black support that stood up and told me I could do it. And that allowed me to do some things that the average person will never do. But it doesn't mean that that's the same opportunity presented to all my brothers and sisters, because the truth is, it's not. It's like a bunch of stuff had to go right for me to get this done. Now, I'm persistent and I refuse to give up, and I've learned how to make things happen when it doesn't seem like it. But I had people teaching me the importance of it, and of the way I behave and the way I carry myself. And there's so much that we don't understand. We can't keep sitting, you got so many of us now. Well, I did this. I had a person show up on one of my posts last week when I was talking about this very thing about uh, the issues that hold us back. And they're saying sitting up, right now in 2020, blaming the white man for our situation economically, blah blah blah, is just foolish. This is not 1960. We can do anything we want to. And my thing is actually, in 1960 we were better off economically than we are now. In 1960, we owned more businesses per capita. In other words, the percentage of businesses owned by blacks based on the number of blacks was higher then than it is now. We had more of an internalized economy. We owned our own cab companies, bus companies, theaters, grocery stores, uh, shoe repair stores, cleaners, and so many more. We owned all of that, and it was inside of our communities. And we solely gave it up to try to integrate into their system, to patronize their businesses, because it was more important for us to be accepted by them and allowed to socialize with them than it was to be economically fluent, economically viable, economically strong. We lost ourselves in a need to be accepted, is what happened in the civil rights era. And Dr. King died when he discovered the era. Not died, he was killed, assassinated, when he discovered the era of the thought processes that you're integrating into a burning house. And so, in essence, what we've got to do is we've got to change the thinking. We've got to come out of the old way of thinking. We've got to start using our creativity. Our creativity is given, you're talking about a people that's so intellectually gifted beyond measure that we have through history created things that have never existed that people are still trying to figure out how we did it. Look at the pyramids. Look at the pyramids. They're so frustrated with not being able to see how someone 5,000 and plus years ago was able to do that with the technology that was available then, that they just ascribed it to aliens. It's easier to say aliens did it than blacks were so far ahead of their time that they did it. So the type of mind spiritually that we have, the way our pineal gland operates in comparison, when laid in juxtaposition to the pineal gland of non-blacks, it's a whole nother ball game. See, we're playing by their rules, and they created these rules because they needed us to stay inside of a box. Because if they knew that if we ever start thinking outside of the box, that there was no way they could contain us. Because what we have going on from a mental, emotional, spiritual perspective is far beyond anything that they can compete with. We're operating at a level that is crazy. Imagine, with everything we've been through, what we've been able to do. Just in the 400 years from 1619 to 2020, 400 and going on 401 year, 401 years, everything we've been through in this country, and yet they can't get rid of us. Yet we're still standing. Yet we're producing. Yet we are presenting a resemblance or a semblance of something exceptional and extraordinary that's extremely scary to them. That's why there's so much hostility. That's why there's so many black men dying at the hands of cops. That's why there's these little pockets of white people calling the cops on blacks for any little small thing. That's why you've got so many organizations and institutions targeting black culture as a means to disrupt and dismiss black intelligence and black spiritual prowess and black intellectual superiority. We have to pay attention and understand that. So what we don't want to do is consistently uh, make our children subject to this type of hostile behavior. we have to do a better job of protecting our children. Now, once again, like I said, I'm going to go to bat for this young brother from my desk, from my phone, from my computer, and if necessarily, I'll take a quick trip up to the school district or the school itself and request a meeting with the principal. And but my thing is, I think that he's going to get a lot of support, and hopefully it will convince the board to not interfere with his graduation. However, we've got to ask ourselves the bigger question: is this what we want to put our energy moving forward? Do we want to put our energy into fighting to get our kids into white schools that are not going to respect who they are culturally, who are not schools that are not going to respect who they are historically, schools that are going to insist that they carry themselves as Eurocentric students rather than Afrocentric students? If it's going to be a continuation of the need for this nation to strip away the history and the identity of Black people in order to keep them subdued, or is this going, or are we rising to the occasion and saying that we are going to become who we should be? We're going to become what we have always been. We are going to walk in the pureness of our Afrocentric ideals, our Afrocentric values, interests, and principles, our Afrocentric demand on self to be exceptional, extraordinary, and phenomenal? Or are we going to continue to allow them to keep us in that box? You ever seen elephants at a circus? Something that I learned as a little kid totally blew my mind, gave me a lot to think about for a lot of years. And it made me real intent on never being a mental slave. And it's not easy, because you know something. That's why I was telling a lot of people the other day, just because you know something, you're conscious of something. That's why I hate the word conscious community, because it's become a platform for intellectual masturbation and no progress. Uh, a bunch of people debating each other on who knows the most, and downgrading and degrading people who they think don't know, and never producing any true solutions, never standing together, never working together. But the one thing that I learned in my desire never to become a mental slave is that it's very difficult, because some of the things are so subtle that you think you're actually operating on your own, and it's actually still something that's been suggested to you. But I've worked real hard on it. But what I noticed at the circus is that, first of all, there's this one guy with this little bitty teeny stick with maybe a little rope on the end of it in the cage with like 8 lions and 4 tigers. And he's got them all sitting up there, and he's handling them, and they're doing little stuff for him sitting down. And in my question, has always been, what happens when that lion remembers who he is? And we found what happened with Sigmund and Freud. What Sigmund and Roy, I think it is Sigmund and Roy. We found out what happened when that tiger remembered who he was. And then, but even bigger than that, you look and you'll see the elephants who are waiting to do their routine, and they're all sitting there, and you go over and you're looking, and they got this little bitty rope around one leg, and it's hooked to this stake that's stuck in the ground. And you're looking like, I know this elephant can actually pull this stake out of the ground and go anywhere they want to, but they're not even trying. The moment they get to where that's the rope tightens, they stop. And then I asked my mom, and she said, I don't know, but she asked the man who was there, and they said, how do you get an elephant to not pull that stake up? They say, we get them when they're real little and they can't pull the stake up. We tie it to them. And by the time they grow up and they're strong enough, they've been trained that they can't pull it up. So they don't even try. That's mental slavery. That's being conditioned to believe you are not capable of doing something that you are more than capable of doing. And it's our responsibility to make sure that our children are not locked in these boxes that they insist on putting them in. You know how many people that are so consumed and conditioned by the Eurocentric idea? Black people. You know how many times I'm talking about stuff like this, and there's a black person that pops up and says that, you know, the rules have always been like that. Why do you want to wear that long hair anyway? It doesn't look professional. You need to cut that and get more neater. You need to fall in line. It's a conditioned response that started way back on the plantation. It's the result of years and years of forced compliance. It's that I am safest when we are in compliance. Now, listen to what I just said. I am safest when we are in compliance. In other words, there's a fear that you being out of compliance is going to bring heat to them. So they want to get everybody to act like they got some sense. Act like you know what you're supposed to be doing. Act like you're a professional. Act like you got some class. Well, how are you defining class, first of all? Are you defining class based off of what I'm wearing? Are you defining class based off of the level of the way I speak? Am I not grammatically correct? Am I grammatically correct enough? That's the questions that we have to ask ourselves. I am just really, really tired of it. We've got to put in some work. I'm going to jump off of here. And I want to encourage you to really take some time to think about what I just said. I want to encourage you to support the work that we're doing at the Odyssey Project. Look inside the description box and you'll see the way to support us. I'm asking you for your support so that we continue to fight this battle, so that we can start building think tanks, so that we can keep Black men lead going and so much more. On that note, I'm going to check out of here. You guys have a great day.